Okay, a little bit late, but call the meeting to order. The clerk, please call the roll.
Jay?
Here.
Taylor? Oh, sorry, Jay. I didn't finish my job there.
That's all right. Here.
Here.
Kurt?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Jeff?
Here.
Bob?
Here.
Brandy? Here. Thank you.
Okay, we have a full assembly this evening with Member Len calling in from the East Coast. Thanks, Bob, for doing that. It's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, that brings us to the next item on this evening's agenda, approval of minutes, and it's approval of minutes from April 15th, 2019 regular meeting, April 17th special meeting minutes, and May 6th regular meeting minutes. I entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
Okay, if there's no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, those minutes are approved. Bring us to item 4, and that's amendment and approval of this evening's meeting agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if it was under the mayor's report, were we going to talk about the manager's evaluation process?
Yeah, I think I added that in there, and it might be part of the reason, it is part of the reason why we changed under new business D, reschedule the meeting. But yeah, I'll bring it up then too. Remind me if I forget, please.
Thank you.
Any other amendments? Member Stan Gregor.
And I was going to move to adopt the agenda as presented.
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll move forward with the agenda as presented. And the first item, next item I should say, is 5, public hearings. There are 2 public hearings this evening. And the first public hearing is on ordinance 2019-03, and that's an ordinance adopting the budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to participate in this public hearing? Please come forward, state your name and who you represent.
Hello, good evening. I'm Tom Abbott, and I'm the station manager here at KFSK's public radio station in town. And I just wanted to speak regarding the budget. Briefly, that I see in the proposed budget a 5% cut to community services. We've already built our budget. We incorporated the 5% cut and totally understand the budget situation that the borough is facing and everybody with the situation of the state budget. So I just wanted to say that we're prepared to work with that 5% cut, but if there's a proposal to go further than that, that I would have to I would argue against that.
Okay. Finance Director Tao, is it actually a 10% cut of what?
Actually a 10% cut, Tom.
Okay.
It's,
I'm looking at from, correct.
10% from what you're getting
From
current
what-
year. So
Current, right.
The KFSK would be
Correct.
$2,325.
Correct.
Okay.
And we're good with that. That's what I have budgeted. That's what we proposed
Okay.
in our budget, and we held a board meeting last week, so we're good with that number. If there's an additional cut, that's what I would speak against, because I'd heard that perhaps that was being proposed. But again, I just wanted to remind everyone the services that KFSK provides. And that is side is the other community services. Everybody provides really good services to the residents of the borough. KFSK is a little unique that we provide services to the residents of the borough, but also directly to the government of the borough. And that's why I was hoping that we can stay away from any further potential cuts that may be coming as the budget continues to proceed with this just the second reading.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to participate in the public hearing in regards to the 2019-2020 budget? Please come forward, state your name, who you represent.
My name is Karen Malcolm, and I'm representing myself for the most part. In regards to KFSK, I'm not here as a new board member for KFSK, but I would like to address the budget cuts that we have done, that Tom has made, to cover that 5% deficit or cut that we're going to see. That we're actually going to be operating in a deficit for the first time ever. So if there were future or deeper cuts, it would be significant. This is bare bones. And as a borough employee that is seated in Debbie's chair on occasion for the Planning and Zoning Commission, it's invaluable to me to have the radio station. It's invaluable for the Public Works Department because of PSAs. We have to get the public announcements out there, and without the radio station, we're not covering that according to ordinances. And we have to pay for the newspaper. We don't for the radio. And just because some people don't listen to it, if it weren't available, nobody would have any of that information. If it wasn't for KFSK, I wouldn't have all of the recording from the last P&Z meeting, and it was 2 hours. So, just the equipment and their manpower and the services that they provide to the borough are invaluable, and it would be a shame to lose that. So, thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify under this public hearing? This public hearing is in regards to the 2019-2020 budget. Okay, I see no one else interested in participating in this public hearing. That'll bring us, so that public hearing is closed. It'll bring us to the second public hearing of the evening, and that's for ordinance 2019-04. This is an ordinance amending chapter 9.28, titled Fireworks of the Borough Code, to update language and declare its application within service area 1 only. So if there's anybody interested in testifying to this or participating in this public hearing, please raise your hand. Okay, start over here. Come forward, state your name and who you represent, please. And everybody's been great keeping their testimony short, but there's a 5-minute limit. So.
Hello, I'm Richard Burke. I'm representing myself, and I promise to be short. I'd like to see the language added back in, allowing the fireworks for the short period of time was listed in 928.020C. I think those days are really short. I don't see the problem with the pets. I think the town's fireworks show causes more pet problems than the amateur setting them off at their home. I think the police chief's and the officers' time is much better spent chasing after DUIs than it is chasing after kids with some firecrackers. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else in the audience want to testify to this or under this public hearing?
Hi, I'm Pat Blair, 305 Mitkoff Highway. Just wanted to let you know that there's one person in favor of fireworks. I think we should have fireworks for Little Norway Days even. Just hoping to keep our fireworks just the way they are. That's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience this evening that would like to participate in the public hearing on this ordinance regarding fireworks? Okay, seeing none, public hearing for that ordinance, which is 2019-04, is closed. That brings us to item 6 on this evening's agenda, which is bid awards. There are no bid awards this evening, which brings us to item 7. This is persons to be heard related to items on today's agenda. So is there anyone who wants to testify about items on today's agenda? Mr. Odegaard?
Good evening. My name is Martin Odegaard. I'm the Public Works Heavy Equipment Operator, and I'm here to talk about the excavator. And, you know, it's aging and all this fun stuff. So, you know, I'll just kind of just brief history. When we had that big Sandy Beach water break, at that particular time it was broke down when we could, you know, that was a critical piece of equipment. And we ended up just having to use our little 420 backhoe. And I think we could have shaved a couple days off of that job, you know, just if we had it. And so there's one thing. And in that same time when it was broke down with that, you know, the hydraulic pump failed on us, we got our winter sand in. And, you know, thankfully Sig was nice enough to let us rent his 320 to do all the stacking. And I tell you what, there is a huge difference between that machine and that old dinosaur 240, that's for sure. And then just recently, the crew and I were placing we bought a used tank that we're using for lignicide. So we had to use this. We had to get the old excavator from the baler, bring it back down to the shop. You know, it's got a big hook on the bucket to put a strap on or a big shackle on. So I had this big shackle on there, and as we were putting it in place, you know, I had to roll the bucket out to get more lift on it so we could crib up the bottom of it. And then I noticed when I rolled it out, the first time it just dropped right back. There was no hold in the hydraulics at all. So I figured out that, well, the boom was leaking off and the bucket was rolling back, so I had to hold with one hand, keeping the boom up, and on the other hand I had to hold the bucket to keep it rolled out so we had enough lift so these guys could slide the cribbing underneath of this thing, which made it, you know, that's not the right way. I mean, it's really easy to get somebody hurt like that. I mean, one way or the other, and it's going straight up or straight down. So I just think it's time to, you know, I wouldn't say kick it down the road, but let it live its life up there at the baler ripping apart boats and stuff. That's fine with that. We got this big project coming up out there at Cabin Creek, putting in that pig launching job. I most definitely don't want to have to use that piece of equipment for that job. I mean, it's just, we got big valves we got to put in, and I'm just really concerned that we're going to have a lot of, you know, everybody's going to have to really be on their toes, keep an eye on, make sure that, you know, nothing's bleeding off, and there are weird angles to hold this valve on. And it's, I don't know, 22 or 24 inch valve. I mean, it's huge and it's heavy. And I just would really, really hate for anybody to get hurt. You know, when we're lifting stuff like that, you know, there's a leg, an arm, somebody could die. I mean, I don't want to sit up here and complain that it's a safety thing, but, you know, when you're lifting manholes and, you know, big valves like this, I mean, it really is. It's critical for guys to be able to, in the machine, to, you know, have very precise, you know, movements with that. And that machine just does not have it anymore. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else in the audience this evening that would like to testify on related items on today's agenda? Blake, want to come up?
Good evening, Assembly. My name is Blake Biat. I'm one of the current treatment operators at the water plant. I'm mostly getting up here just to kind of help support Martin in the Public Works Department. I've been doing the job up there for about 7 years, and I just kind of wanted to help support him. It's a super reliable, or you want a piece of equipment that's reliable when things go bad. I don't think a lot of people understand the damage water can do when one of those big lines breaks. For instance, a lot of the breaks we have, sometimes they might be minor. At a residence where we have like a funky loop, we had one a couple years ago up at the ball field, and then within a matter of maybe an hour and a half, it completely almost washed out the person's driveway. So, and another thing I wanted to say is that old excavator that's up there, I mean, I don't think you guys would really want that thing to be digging down, working on our clean distribution lines for the water. That thing's getting crapped on constantly. It's been touching garbage. There's not really a good way to clean something like that once you've been dealing with that kind of stuff. As far as, or you can clean it, but it takes a lot of effort. And same thing with sewer. I mean, if you have something break loose, I think it's just, you want something that can handle the job really quick. I was there for the break last year on the Sandy Beach line, and it was a joke having to watch these guys bust their butts out there with the backhoe. All the equipment, the rest of the equipment in town couldn't even be rented because it was such a busy time of the year when this happened, and we were losing. I mean, the water itself doesn't cost a whole lot at the time, but we were losing probably 400,000 gallons of water a day just going out into the muskeg. I mean, and that's chemicals we're using. I mean, that's money either way if that adds up. So that's the point I'm trying to make is, really take his comment serious in mind. I mean, it's especially wintertime. Imagine if something breaks downtown, one of our big mains that hasn't been seen in how many years, 20, 30 years. I mean, you're going to want something that can get down there and take care of that quickly. If you pick something that's not that reliable and it breaks down, well, it might be a nightmare on your hands. So I just want you to please consider, his comment in mind, and I hope you guys will do the right thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the audience with items related to today's agenda?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the Petersburg Borough Assembly. My name is David Beebe. I'm representing myself and the best interests of all taxpaying U.S. citizen owners of the Tongass National Forest who couldn't be here this evening. I'd like to begin by asking for a show of hands on the Assembly as to who can explain to me the acronym DXPRE used in the Washington Office Activity Review and its significance to the Forest Service's Chief's response letter. Well, that's too bad because it's essentially vital to understanding the matter of a $2 million loss of revenues to the borough economy from public resources in our own borough's backyard. Keep in mind that that's just one recent timber sale alone. In all fairness, though, I've been trying to understand the Forest Service machinations on the Tongass for the last 30 years. So if crucial information isn't in the news, here's my method. If I don't understand something like, what's DXPRE? I ask questions on my own, and I'm here to tell you. It often works. By the way, the correct answer is designated prescription. To quote from one of the documents of the Washington Office Activity Review, I quote, "Can't say enough about DXPRE and the need for basal area acre plot inspection. The cost of not inspecting and not following the contract and prescription was close to $2 million, more than double the original stumpage." So if you're wondering how the Forest Service Chief's letter will result in holding accountable several key individuals and line officers who have suddenly and coincidentally retired with their pensions intact, or if you're wondering how some have been promoted after failing in their sworn duties of inspecting, monitoring, or enforcing laws, employee code of conduct, and professional protocols to prevent timber theft and taxpayer fraud, I'm with you. Because what the chief finally said in her letter, after several months of silence, was she's not going to address the answers. The agency has already provided those answers. Her answers have been there, and they will be zero professional and personal accountability. I say this because unless there is agency-imposed personal and professional accountability exerted on violators of the public trust, resulting in millions of dollars in taxpayer fraud and theft, we can reliably expect it in the future. So what the Washington Office Activity Review is saying is all the millions of dollars, of taxpayer dollars, invested in the Tonka timber sale, all the public workshops directed by the Thorn Bay and Petersburg District Rangers about the, quote, stewardship and restoration and integrated resource timber contracts, end quote, were in reality a con, a public relations scam. And all the hundreds of hours of Ranger District technical expertise that have been committed to laying out units and roads in compliance with National Environmental Policy Act requirements and all the sale preparation of the Tonka timber sale, all this in order to produce a legally binding contract that was not enforced with prescriptions for tree removal in order that there were a few revenue crumbs to fund agency promises of stewardship and restoration. They were all exposed as lies by the Washington Office Activity Review. And after 30 years of clear-cutting the Lindenberg Peninsula, all the public testimony in the NILCA Section 810 hearings, and all the rural resident concerns for direct impacts on the Tonka timber sale to their subsistence deer resources came true. In fact, there was an emergency federal subsistence meeting reducing the deer bag limit to just $1 and 14-day hunting season imposed while the trees were still being cut on the Tonka timber sale. And by the way, that's the same bag limit that's long been imposed on Midcoff Island for decades after the clear-cutting of 45 years ago was finished. Thank you for this opportunity. Any questions?
Thank you for your testimony. Anybody else in the audience that would like to or has an issue on an item on tonight's agenda? Please step forward, state your name, and Becky, yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and Assembly members. My name is Becky Knight, and I represent myself. The Assembly's failure to take concrete action on the formal findings of the Forest Service 2016 audit, and I'm using audit and review interchangeably, of the Big Thorn and Tonka timber sales continues to disappoint. Your nice November 6, 2018 letter to Forest Service Chief Vicki Christensen was sent in lieu of a resolution requesting an independent OIG, that's Office of Inspector General, audit of the sales. The flawed rationale in support of a letter instead of a resolution was that the resolution, although 100% factual, was too negative and that it would muck up an unconfirmed internal audit, which allegedly was to be concluded any day. 6 months later is what NICE gets you. A long, delinquent, and predictable nothing burger response that does absolutely zero to clear the air of find resolution. I ask you, just whose water is the Assembly carrying? The failure of the agency to adequately answer the borough's letter is shameful on many levels. While the agency offered an apology for their extremely tardy response, they offered no explanation for the delay, despite the borough's January follow-up. Second, although requested by you, they offered no proof that the review's formal findings were corrected or that any corrected actions have been implemented. Third, despite your request that the audit be concluded rapidly, they continue to ruminate on a follow-up audit initiated over a year ago of the 2016 audit. In short, their response said someday they'll share a review of the 2018 audit of the 2016 audit. Confused? Does this sound like a bunch of agency wordsmith doublespeak to anyone on the Assembly? It would be laughable if the consequences weren't so dire. My interpretation, their best attempts at cooking defensible spin has been challenging in light of the discoverable evidence. Meanwhile, the agency proceeds with timber sale planning and administration, some of which are the largest in our nation in over 2 decades, and during a time when other national forests have abandoned the practice of old-growth logging. Meanwhile, 650-foot-long freighters are loaded to the gills with unprocessed Tongass timber bound for China with no verifiable proof that those logs have been legally cut and accounted for. In the absence of this accountability, one can only conclude that it's a free-for-all out there. Meanwhile, it has not gone unnoticed regarding the number of high-level Forest Service timber personnel retirements and transfers, including promotions, which have occurred since the heat was applied, asking for accountability. Also glaring is the absence of any agency official in attendance at your meetings since this story first broke. In years past, high-level agency officials have enthusiastically attended council and assembly meetings in pursuit of your approval for their timber projects. Meanwhile, the agency continues to kick the can down the road with business as usual, otherwise known as the Alaska Rules, which unofficially exempt the Tongass from following federal and agency regulations. Meanwhile, the clock runs out, and the opportunity to benefit from timber sales revenue opportunities may never be realized. The Forest Service will continue to be converted to a plantation devoid of diversity and other non-timber extraction opportunities and values. Not only is stonewalling by a federal agency a concern, the Mueller report took less time, but the fact that the agency has appointed itself in charge of the latest audit is deeply troubling. Would you have trusted Bernie Madoff to audit his own books? The logic behind following the agency's more stonewalling with yet another weak-kneed pass eludes me. Finally, how can the Assembly sit before the public straight-faced and advance any cuts to the borough budget yet fail to take honest action to get to the bottom of the Forest Service's review? Perhaps you don't consider the undervaluation of timber resulting in unrealized value of at least $4 million in 2 local timber sales an issue, but I suspect the regular folks out there might think otherwise. This says nothing of the environmental impacts which will endure for generations. I'm available to share any other information I have or answer any questions to help you become more familiar with this boondoggle. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here this evening with items related to today's agenda who'd like to speak to anything? Please, okay, we'll start here. Mr. Martin, and then we'll have the chief come up.
Hi, I'm Bob Martin. I'm here for myself and for the Harbor Board. First, I'd just like to back up Tom Abbott there. I really appreciate the role KFSK plays in listening to the meetings on Council Corner. Thanks, Mr. Mayor and Taylor, for doing that today. As far as the Harbor Board, I just want to speak for the land swap again. And listening to the radio there, I heard that there's kind of a new phantom alternative to the petro land swap that we feel like it's kind of frustrating because there's always another alternative, but it never gets fleshed out and presented in a way we can look at it on the Harbor Board. And we like the land swap. If there's something better, I really think we'd like that too, but we can't really get it pinned down to work through it. So, but what it sounds like is maybe trading an inferior location for a new building. And I just think when it really comes down to it, it's all going to kind of wash out to be in the ballpark. And it also brings up how are we going to pay for a new building. Right now, foregoing the lease payments kind of allows a way to ease into the petro property, where I don't know if we have to come up with $350,000 for a new building, if that's going to fly with a revenue bond or something in this climate. So, and it also occurred to me that if we do have some ready-to-build land that the borough's not using that would be suitable for a harbor maintenance building, maybe that land could be sold to offset taking the tax rolls off of the petro land. So all those things would be really good to discuss in the harbor board, but it seems like it's kind of brought up at the last minute. It just makes me wonder, those of you who oppose the land swap, are you really going to go to bat for the new building alternative? I just don't see it happening. And so in effect, I think you're just killing it. But I've heard you say that you all agree it's needed, but I feel like this is the best path to make it happen. So I hope you'll give it your full consideration. And I can look the ratepayers in the eye as a harbor board chair and say, we looked at it, it makes sense, it is expensive, but we've got to have a better facility for maintaining our harbors, because I thought about when the budget came out that maybe this changes everything if the raw fish tax is affected, but in the end we still have maintenance to do. The staff needs a place to get out of the rain, store stuff. It doesn't really change what's going on. Just like have a bad season, I still got to maintain my boat. I can't work out in the rain forever. So I'd just like you to reconsider your opposition if that's how you feel, and thanks for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the audience? Well, Chief, you're next. You had your hand up. And then is there anyone after the Chief that would like to testify on items related to today's agenda, so we could kind of get a order flow here?
My name's James Curry. I'm representing myself. After hearing Martin talk about the failing excavator, I think having those safety concerns, we definitely need to replace it. I mean, that line of work, and of course the police work, I see when people raise safety concerns like that. I mean, talking about having the guys working around that sort of equipment and the steps that he's having to take to keep the bucket from falling, that's definite safety concerns. I mean, the purchase of it is $179,250. If you compare that to a lawsuit, you were getting off cheap compared to that. So I hope you guys are in favor of replacing this excavator based on the safety concerns that he was talking about. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kerr. Anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on the items related to today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to persons to be heard on items unrelated to today's agenda. Okay, please step forward. State your name, who you represent.
Hi, my name's Joe Sebastian. I'm a commercial fisherman for 40 years. And I'm representing myself and my family. Over the past winter and this spring, every day it seems like there's just an overwhelming amount of evidence about climate change and the effects of climate change. October 20th, 2018, Washington Post, world has just over a decade. Get climate change under control, UN scientists say. There's no documented historic precedent for the scale of changes required, the body found. November 24th, 2018, major Trump administration climate report says damage is intensifying across the country. Scientists are more certain than ever that climate change is already affecting the United States, and it's going to be very expensive. I think Nebraska costs $2 billion, is what they were thinking. December 4th, 2018, David Attenborough warns of collapse of civilizations at UN climate meeting. David Attenborough, naturalist and broadcaster, sounded a dire warning in his speech Monday to the UN climate conference in Poland. Right now, we are facing a man-made disaster of global scale, our greatest threat in thousands of years, climate change. He's 92 years old, by the way. February 14th, 2019, New York Times. Ocean warming is accelerating faster than thought, new research finds. 2018 is going to be the warmest year on record for the Earth's oceans, as 2017 was the warmest year and 2016 was the warmest year. As the planet has warmed, oceans have provided a critical buffer and have slowed the effects of climate change by absorbing 93% of the heat trapped by greenhouse gases humans pump into the atmosphere. If if the ocean wasn't absorbing as much heat, the surface of the land would heat up much faster than it is right now. In fact, the ocean is saving us from massive warming right now, said Associate Professor Malin Pinsky, the Department of Ecology and Evolution and Natural Resources at Rutgers University. Currently, this is all leading up to Senator Lisa Murkowski is leading an all-out assault on the roadless rule and trying to repeal it, and using small towns on Prince of Wales as an excuse to provide jobs or secure rural funding for schools and other ruses. Really, what's really taking place is to fill the log ships, the 3 brand new log ships owned by a giant conglomerate corporation with Tongass logs, and get those logs to China. That's what this repeal of the roadless rule is. These trees that the roadless rule repeal would affect are currently the Tongass National Forest is the 5th largest carbon sink in the world. Given all this accumulation of facts, and on a daily basis, I would like to see this assembly oppose Senator Murkowski's repeal of the roadless rule with a resolution. The senator is wrong on this issue. There's no sin or shame in that. We've all been wrong in our life, but on this issue, she's dead wrong. At this critical junction of time and human history, with all the facts from all over the world, to sit and allow these forests to be cut without lifting a finger in a town that's totally dependent on the ocean. I'm totally dependent on the oceans, and I've seen the oceans changing myself, as everyone has. In fact, I looked up the blob today on the computer, and the blob is growing. Fisheries are collapsing. The cod fishery collapsed. Where's our king salmon? We know that they can get to the streams, but out in the ocean, we've lost track.
That's been 5 minutes, please. Wrap it up.
Please, let's this town, this borough, these fishermen, these families dependent on this ocean, correct Senator Murkowski's position, and we have every right to do so, and not only that, it's our duty. And to not do so and not oppose her actions, we're just cutting ourselves off at the knees. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the audience this evening that has any topics they'd like to speak to unrelated to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to board, commission, and committee reports. There are none listed on the agenda this evening. Excuse me. Item 10, consent agenda, no items there. Report of other officers. That brings us to Phil Hofstetter, Petersburg Medical Center update.
Thank you. Phil Hofstetter, Administrator at Petersburg Medical Center. I have 4 items to update. Obviously, with the state budget, just a quick update from the healthcare side. We heard today there was a teleconference that the impacts to, at least the guarantee impacts to healthcare will be on the long-term care side of 3% across the board. So any facility has 3% in the state related to Medicaid will be cut in that amount. For PMC, for Petersburg Medical Center, that equates to about $90,000. So we will have to adjust our budget with that in mind. So that's probably one of the first real, windows we saw related to healthcare, regardless of how what the budget looks like for approval. That seems like that's where the state's going. The second item is Community Cafe. We had a third one earlier this month. I want to thank the Assembly for allowing us to use the chambers here. We talked about the impacts of budget cuts to health care in general, and then we had some good turnout for discussion and feedback for some innovative concepts for what health care could look like in the future, some of those concepts. So one positive note, we had our first cohort of RN graduates. We worked with UAA to have our program here available at Petersburg, and that's a pretty exciting thing. We had 4 graduates, and 3 of them are going to be working at Petersburg Medical Center, and the next cohort's going to be coming up. So that's really positive news on local hire. And the last item is master planning. As I mentioned previously, we had some Denali Commission grant funds to help with master planning on our aging facility. What are sort of the next steps, and that involves sort of an inundation study, structural analysis, and financial feasibility and debt capacity analysis. And we did have 5 firms that put proposals in. We had 2 finalists, and we interviewed 2 finalists here on site, their teams, and we did select 1 finalist to put in for final negotiations, or for 2 negotiations. We'll be asking for board approval is sort of the next step to go with that firm, so we're very excited. I'll have a lot more detail if anyone's interested. We have a board meeting this Thursday. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Phil. Is there any questions of the team? Okay, thank you, Phil.
Thanks
for the update. The next item on the agenda is the mayor's report. Fairly short this evening. Just thank the chamber and everybody that was involved in setting up the Little Norway Festival this year. It seemed to be a great success. We had a couple of senators in town. Senator Stedman, state senator, and Senator Dan Sullivan was here, or one of our 2 federal senators. Senator Sullivan visited with Phil at the medical center, and he also went to the Anacapa. So that he seemed to enjoy himself. We were in the parade, and he got kidnapped by the Valkyries, and he said it was the best bus ride he's ever had. So he enjoyed that. I told him at the airport. First meeting in June will be the last meeting I will be able to attend in person until potentially September. I'll be able to call in from time to time, so just so that's on everybody's radar. Member Mucci and I met with the manager on the 16th, and we went over the evaluations. And during that process, we decided the most important thing that the manager needs is goals and objectives. And we'd like for us to, give him more information. There was some, but he would like a definite direction. Also, Member Mucci and I and the manager thought it might be beneficial. It's not a requirement. It's a little different twist to the evaluation process, but the manager was agreeable to meet with assembly members one-on-one and see if they could, come to an agreement on if there's any issues that any assembly members have with the manager. And then if there's any changes, we'll add that into the evaluation and then present that to the assembly. And later on in the meeting, we're going to be talking about moving the meeting to June 10th from the 3rd. That gives us more time. And I had one question. Remember Greg, are you going to be in town then? Or?
I will still be in town on the 10th, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll discuss that later. So that's about it for the mayor's report. And there will be no manager's report this evening. The manager is in Juneau, and he will be returning on Thursday, I believe. Unfinished business.
Yes, sir.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had a few people ask me about, when we get our federal representatives in town, whether it's Don Young or Dan Sullivan, do they ever sit down with the public and kind of talk to us as a community to kind of maybe hear what the local community is talking about things that are important to them? A lot of times we don't get a chance to socialize with them. You'll see them walking down the street or up on a float, but I think there's a lot of stuff that's going on in Washington, D.C., and it would really be nice if like when Representative Young's in town or when Senator Sullivan's in town, to carve out an hour or so just to kind of sit down with the community and hear what we have to say or hear what's going on in Washington, D.C. I mean, we get the opportunity every so often to go back and talk with our representatives back there, but it would be really nice if they could carve out a few minutes to spend with the community. I know they talk to people around town, but the community really doesn't get a chance to kind of, as a whole, ask questions or have the senator tell us what he's up to and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's a good opportunity while they're in town, and I think a lot of people would show up to ask questions or hear what the senators and congressmen have to say. So I'm hoping that the next time they come to town, we get the opportunity to kind of chat with them. I think it would be good for the community.
Yeah, well, maybe that's a communication that could be sent to their offices. The representative for Southeast is Sherry Klein, and she's in Ketchikan, and she represents both of our senators from Southeast. And as far as Congressman Young, he has a new representative now. It's not Chad Paget, and the name of the gentleman eludes me right now, but yeah, that's easy. That could be communicated to them.
Great.
So, like I said, no manager's report. Manager Giesbrecht will be back Thursday, back in the office Friday. Does anybody want to take a 5-minute break, or should we continue starting with unfinished business? Okay, we'll move along. You still awake there, back there, Bob?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, just checking in on you. Okay, we have ordinances for second reading. And the first one is ordinance 2019-03. And this is an ordinance adopting the budget for fiscal year July 1st, 2019 through June 30th of 2020. So I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading.
So moved.
Second. Motion been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Walhooter to adopt this ordinance in regards to our next year's budget. Any discussion? Member Stanton Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to make an amendment to allocate the amount that it was last year. I believe, Jody, $4,000 back towards Cooper North that we've historically given them.
Yes.
So that'd be my motion to add that to the budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay, motion been made, amendment by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Mucci to add the $4,000-ish pass-through money back to the city of Kupernoff. Any discussion? Member Stanton Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, historically, as we talked last time, the state, prior to borough formation, and Jody cut me off if I speak out of turn at any point, would give money directly to them. And during borough formation, the money came to us, and we've been giving it to them since. I'm on the right track so far, Jody?
Yes.
Thank you. And it's just a good thing to do. It's not a pile of money. They've been using it towards maintaining their infrastructure over there, which a lot of us use. And for $4,000, I think it's a darn good investment. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support this. Had a chance to talk to some of the folks over in Kupernoff over the last couple of weeks, and it's one of the things that I didn't really realize is that they're very good neighbors. And I was down working on the boat today. There was rubber raft of tourists going over there, wandering around on the boardwalk that they maintain. Several years ago, they donated $25,000 for the library. Several years ago, they donated $12,000 to the harbor security boat. Several years ago, they paid for half the cost of the harbor four-wheel drive four-wheeler, and they're spending money for trail maintenance. And we've done this for a long period of time in the past, and it's $4,000. I think it's well worth the investment in a good neighbor for us. So I'm going to support this.
Okay, any other discussion by Assembly members on this amendment? Clerk, call the roll on the amendment.
Jay?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Brandy? Yes. Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, the amendment passes, so that will be added back into the budget for the third reading. Any other amendments or proposals? Member Stanton Gregor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I would also make a motion to amend the budget to include the updated health insurance cost for a total savings to the borough of $200,000.
Okay. Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Borough to add the savings of $200,000 to the health insurance. That was realized from the hospital and the borough getting together, if I'm not mistaken, and combining their insurance through one provider, right?
That's correct, but also choosing plans with higher deductibles as well.
Okay. Okay, Member Stanton Gregor.
That wording works for you?
Yes.
Clerk? Okay, cool.
Okay, any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously. That's added into this year's budget, starting at the end of July. So, any other discussion on the proposed budget? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to amend on the budget to remove $10,000 that we put in the last meeting to contract snow plow removal outside of Service Area 1.
Is there a second to the motion? And I believe, if I understood the motion by Member Mucci, would like to remove the $10,000 that we put into the budget at the first reading to do snow removal outside Service Area 1.
I'll second it for the sake of the discussion.
Yeah, second to the amendment has been made by Member Wallhooder. Discussion? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, my point here is that I still firmly believe that the borough shouldn't be taking care of roads that aren't part of the borough. If they're outside Service Area 1, those folks need to kind of sort out how the snow and road maintenance can be taken care of. I was told last week that the city was plowing snow on some of the side roads for Papke's over the winter, and now there are a couple of property owners who want the city to come out and remove the sand that the city put down over the winter for snow removal. So I think there needs to be some work by the property owners outside Service Area 1, and I just don't think that the community members should be paying for roads that aren't part of the borough. That's my reasoning.
Okay, any other discussion? Member Norheim?
I guess I have a question would be then, are they currently not paying taxes to have this service?
I believe it wasn't, and Carl could probably maybe be the best one, maybe Jody, to answer this since the manager's not here. I believe prior to borough formation, the roads were all plowed. But it was kind of a verbal agreement that during borough formation, and we had this discussion at the last meeting, that they would plow them. So, and that's all I know for detail. Debbie, or can anybody, anyone in administration answer it better?
As far as taxes go, anyone outside of Service Area 1 is only paying taxes for education. It's going all to education.
Right.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, there was nothing, I mean, I've looked into this over the borough formation, and there is some verbiage about road maintenance, but there's nothing that says that this is going to happen into perpetuity. You know, it says, the statement off the borough formation papers, it says the borough policy is not to assume new roads into local street systems until the roads and streets are built or improved to borough standards and accepted as the borough streets. So if people have private roads around town, and those roads going from that feed into the state highway at Papke's, if folks want to bring those roads up to state or up to our standards, and we decide to take them over, then I think the borough should take care of those roads out there. But just doing it as, I don't know if the word's a favor, but I mean, if somebody can tell me there's some safety issues that need to get addressed during the wintertime for snow removal, then that's great. But just to do it because we have the machinery to do it. I think we're putting an undue burden on the equipment that we have up at Public Works, and I think the Public Works guys can probably find other things to do than run out the road and remove the snow. So, yep, that's all I have.
Any other discussion? Taylor, did you have?
Mr. Mayor, may I join in?
You sure can. You have the floor.
I'm going to come at it from a different standpoint. I think we ought to treat the people outside of Service Area 1 the same as inside. We plow roads right now inside and doing a study to look at whether we should continue that or what should be done. I think until that is finished, we ought to treat the ones outside the same as inside, number one. Number two, I was surprised this winter that now on the roads that were agreed to be plowed, and that was talked about during, not only during Borough formation, but during the time that we had the group here who finally made that determination, that we would plow those roads. But we have, this winter, we had kids on every one of those roads out there. And they were walking down or were going back and forth on those side roads that are being plowed. And I think we need to look at that and treat that the same way as we would the situation in town. And so I guess I can't pay. The other thing I would say is that when we need borough formation, we got a considerable amount more built money than we had before. None of that money, all that money is going to town. We said it would go to schools, and that's fine, but also part of that money is to be used for roads. And to me, there's no reason that part of some small part of that money can't be used to continue to plow those roads until we make a decision what we want to do in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your input there, Member Lynn. Any other discussion on the amendment? Member Norheim?
I guess just if we're going to be treating the people out the road the same as in town, then perhaps their mill rate or something should be increased to cover the cost of plowing their roads.
I believe they'd have to vote on that as a former service area potentially. I don't know the exact protocol, but Member Walter, did you have a comment first, or?
No, go ahead.
Member Bucci, I'm trying to answer to have people speak that haven't spoke to the issue already.
Sure.
In order. Okay, Member Bucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, if the people that live outside Service Area 1 want to have snow removal and their roads maintained, then they need to be paying the same amount as the rest of the folks in town. They might not have as fast as response from the fire police as everybody else, but if they're going to demand or if they're going to expect the same services that everybody else in town, then they should pay for it. If Member Lynn's house out at Papke's is being plowed, then people need to pay their own way. I mean, I don't think the community wants us to step outside of the Service Area 1 and plow streets that don't belong to the borough. I mean, if that's what we're going to do, if we're going to start doing that, then I think we need to look at the tax rate outside of Service Area 1 and bring them into compliance with the rest of the community.
Any more discussion on this amendment to remove the $10,000? I have a quick question, I guess, for Director Cotta. Do we pick up garbage out there? And I know during borough formation we weren't required to provide ambulance service or fire service, but that is provided potentially as well?
I can't speak to ambulance service, but we do pick up garbage out there.
Okay, so all right. Just a question. It'd be kind of hard to do if the people didn't have the wherewithal to plow their own road. We were sending borough refuge collection vehicles out there. So, Member Norheim?
I could probably speak to fire and ambulances. Sure. We would absolutely respond. It doesn't matter where it is on the island, we're going to go.
Okay, so if we weren't assured that these roads were going to be potentially plowed, that could create a stumbling block in my mind. So I don't think I will be voting to remove the $10,000. That's just my input. Member Stanton Gregor?
Yeah, just briefly, I thought Member Lynn said it well. During borough formation, there's a lot of rhetoric about what services would be maintained, which ones would be changed, and I paid pretty close attention to all that, and yeah, nothing is in writing. We can do as we please as an assembly, but some strong assurances were made to people outside of Service Area 1 that they would be treated equally to, in terms of public services. Regardless, that decision was made knowing their tax rate would be different, so I can't support this amendment right now.
Okay, any other discussion on the amendment? Clerk call a roll on this amendment. And the amendment is to remove the $10,000 we put in the budget last here, the first reading of this ordinance. So, clerk call a roll.
Jeff?
Yes.
Jay?
No.
Randy? No. Bob?
No.
Taylor?
No.
Mark?
No.
Kurt?
No. Okay, the amendment to remove the $10,000 for snow removal outside Service Area 1 fails with a 6-1 vote. Any other discussion on the budget overall as amended? Member Norham?
I mean, I've got an amendment was perhaps reducing the assembly pay to $50 a meeting. I mean, if we're looking to cut costs somewhere, it seems like a reasonable thing to do.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion's been made by Member Norheim to reduce the salary of the assembly by $50 a meeting. Been seconded by Member Mucci. Discussion. Member Walter.
Point of clarification, Taylor, is that to make it $50 a meeting or reduce it by 50?
No, $250.
To make it to $50 per meeting.
Sorry, it's down to $50, yes.
Right, instead of the $150 we are currently
Yes.
getting. Okay.
Yes.
Any more discussion? Member Stan Gregor?
Yeah, I won't be supporting this, and primarily for one reason. When we're trying to encourage people outside of Service Area 1 to join the assembly, not to use Member Lynn as an example, but let's say he's over in Duncan Canal, fuel, time, energy, vehicle wear and tear, like, none of us are on the assembly to make a buck and salt money away. That is not the reality of what we're doing up here, but I don't think it would be fair to have somebody actually pay to be on the assembly. The idea of having to actually pay for to get here and serve, I think it would be discouraging of getting more people to want to be on the assembly, especially outside of Service Area 1.
Any other discussion on the proposed amendment to reduce the pay for the assembly to $50 per meeting? Clerk call the roll.
Kurt?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Bob?
No.
Randy?
No.
Jay?
No.
Okay, that amendment fails with a 4-3 vote, with Member Norheim, Mucci, and Walhuter in favor, and brings us back to the main motion to adopt the budget in its second reading. Any more discussion or proposed amendments? Clerk call the roll.
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Okay, the budget as amended is moving on to its third and final reading, and we've gone through the public hearing this evening. That brings us to ordinance 2019-04, and this is an ordinance amending chapter 9.28, and that's titled Fireworks of the Borough Code to update language and declare its application within Service Area 1 only. And entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its second reading.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Mucci to adopt ordinance 2019-04 in its second reading. Discussion? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to amend this motion to allow the public use of fireworks on July 4th and December 31st.
I would like to second that.
Okay, amendment, the motion's been made to amend it, if I understood it right, to allow fireworks on July 4th and December 31st. Discussion. Member Norheim.
So my reader here is not loading up, so I can't actually look at the amendment right now, but just as to clarify, to the people listening, allowing fireworks, if you haven't read the ordinance, it's only on your private property. There isn't going to be people running around all over the place letting off fireworks left and right. It's only on your property or the property of, say, your friend's house if you went over for a barbecue or something. And there is, I know, an issue where the police would rather be spending their time probably looking for more things than a bunch of kids, as was stated earlier, lighting off firecrackers somewhere. And maybe they could get a couple busts on somebody, but it's more of a waste of their time, I feel like, when there's more important things to be doing. Also, it's the 4th of July. It's the nation's birthday celebration, and now we're going to criminalize people for celebrating it because some people don't want to sedate their dogs or snuggle them or something. I mean, come on. And then to the point of the veterans suffering from PTSD, I asked a couple if it was a problem, and they said it was. The first year, second year, not a problem. You know, they put themselves out of the way. Now it's a non-issue. If there is someone out there listening who it is a problem for, please come to the next meeting. I would love to hear it. But if there isn't, then we want to celebrate the 4th of July the way we do with fireworks. Okay.
Any other discussion on the, and this is on the amendment?
Mr. Mayor, may I jump in there for a minute?
You have the floor.
I've read that ordinance now a number of times. Can the person, the individual, I don't know who's in the staff that can answer the question, but can you define for me specifically what is included in those fireworks or the legalese used in that ordinance?
I don't have the answer. Is there you're asking for a description of whether it's pot bottle rockets or sparklers or Roman candles? Is that what you're asking?
All the above, and what is included and what is not included in those definitions. And when I read the ordinance, I don't understand.
Okay.
Okay.
Chief Kerr raised his hand. Do you have an answer for that?
Yes.
Tim?
I spoke with Ryan about this, and the reason why we put in there the how's it define it? As the 1.4G is the consumer fireworks. Those are the ones you can legally purchase from the fireworks stands without a special permit. The display fireworks, the 1.3G is the stuff you have to go through the state to get a permit, and that's what the borough has to get. So, like the ones lit off at the ball fields, those are display fireworks. Those are the ones you have to get a permit through the state to light off. The other ones would be the ones you're able to purchase from the fireworks stand. So instead of listing all these things individually, we just went with the state fire code, as far as I understand, with what Ryan was talking about under the classification. So the 1.3 and the 1.4 is how the state defines them.
Okay, did you hear that clearly, Member Lynn?
I can hear that. Now, let me ask a follow-up question to that. Okay, I can go out to the stand and buy Roman candles, just to use for my own use, and I do, because I'm not in Service Area 1. But as Assemblymember Norheim says, it's for your own property. So I can set on my own property and shoot those Roman candles 200-300 feet in the air so they land on my neighbors. Is that the way I'm understanding it?
No, you're actually, the way you're referring to is the negligent. If you read that section, you have to be responsible for the own fireworks that you light off. That'd fall under the negligent manner.
I guess you'd be responsible for burning your neighbor's house down.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand here.
Okay, and that is if these are legalized on these specific dates. And I can't remember the first reading of this, or what is the time of day that we were going to allow this? And your amendment, Member Mucci, you just said the 4th of July and December 31st. Do you mean 24 hours of those given days?
Sure.
I mean, that's... But then, that take, you get past midnight on the 4th and it would be legal, Member Norham?
Again,
I mean, we didn't
can't get
specify
it.
a time,
I can't
and that's
get
we're
it
going to
to
go back.
But there was a
Clerk,
time
do you have a
specified.
clarification? Do you have a...
It was noon to 1 a.m.
Okay, noon to 1 a.m. Which takes it, into the next day, which is it's generally celebrated around midnight, the fireworks are, but... Member Walter?
Yeah, to clarify, originally, we took the 3 days out, and it was from noon to 1 a.m. on the 3rd, noon to 1 a.m. on the 4th, and noon to 1 a.m. on the 31st of December. Are those the words that we want to put back in there? Is that what this is, the amendment's about?
Back to the original, it would just be the 2 days proposed. That's what we're discussing at this point.
Mr. Mayor? Yep, that would be fine with me. Thank you.
And there was something I wanted to put on here. I don't know where to put it in here. It's an amendment that would...
Okay, we're just discussing this one amendment. We do one amendment at a time.
All right.
It keeps it clear in our minds. Member Stan Gregor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't be voting for this. I spoke to it last time. People use fireworks in town anyway. There's definitely a live and let live attitude towards that. This has technically been illegal in Service Area 1. It's not new. A member of the community, I don't know if I won't use his name because he didn't give permission to, but it's in all the Assembly's things, emails. He wrote that having an exception for certain days will cause endless confusion and calls to the police department. The idea of having no boundaries can cause stress not only to animals but humans. I personally find the comment, just because you don't want to sedate your dog doesn't mean you like fireworks. I don't think that's an appropriate view of this topic. People with PTSD have commented to me about that for a planned fireworks, let's say at the ball field, cool, they can go deal with whatever, leave town, do whatever they need to do, but having it going on and off all day and into the night did not resonate with them. For planned fireworks, they felt just fine dealing with that. That was on them to deal with that. I don't see a compelling reason to put that language in there, so I'll be voting no on this amendment.
Okay, any more discussion on the amendment? Member Morrell?
Well, I too feel like we should be using our police force, especially since they are low in numbers, better than running around regulating young kids on 4th of July. I also spoke to my husband, who's a war vet, and he said, there's times and places where maybe fireworks do set them off. He goes, but around 4th of July and times where you expect it, not so much. I also asked other people in town, and they said other vets pretty much the same thing. And so because of that, I will be voting for this.
Okay, any more discussion on this amendment, on this ordinance to add the times back in for July 4th from noon to 1 a.m. on the 5th and December 31st from noon to the 1 a.m. on the January 1st? Clerk, call the roll.
Randy?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Kurt?
Yes.
Bob?
No.
Jay?
Nope.
Jeff?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, it's back in for the second reading. Fireworks will be allowed on those 2 days, so.
3 days, correct? July 3rd, 4th?
No, 4th and
just the 4th.
20th or the 31st or whatever the last day of December is.
Thank you.
That could be amended again, though, at the next reading. So now, we're voting on the ordinance as amended, which will allow fireworks on those 2 days. Member Norham?
Is this where I would make the new amendment?
If you want to add something, yes, or
So
amend
it
it.
would be to limit this to only 2 years, like a 2-year trial period on this. So if there is an issue and it does come back, we can just end it and it'll be done.
Can we put a sunset on an ordinance?
That's a good question.
I think it'd have to be addressed again as the assembly and then be, just off the top of my head, I would think that would be the proper way.
I would think it would have to come back, yes.
You'll still be here, Member Norham. You're not even through your first year, right?
Okay. In 2 years, I will bring it back up, and if it's an issue, we'll get rid of it.
Okay.
Or we'll...
Well, I'm sure we'll get, depends on how the third vote comes out, we'll probably get public,
Right.
If it passes, we'll see how people feel after 4th of July and December 31st, and we'll hear about it, I'm sure. So no amendment then for that, because I don't think that we can do that. Yeah. So back to the main motion as amended, and that was to add those 2 days in Service Area 1 on your own property. Clerk, call the roll.
Kurt?
Yes.
Jay?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Bob?
No.
Taylor?
Yes.
Okay, the main motion as amended passes on a 4-3 vote with Member Lynn, Member Stan Gregory, and myself opposing it. So that brings us to the next item on the agenda. And other unfinished business items. Land selections prioritization. I would entertain a motion to accept Director Cabrera's plan. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Motion been made by Member Stan Gregory, seconded by Member Mucci, I believe.
Yep.
Discussion. Does anybody feel they need an explanation? Liz, maybe can you give us a quick one just so the listening audience can know what we're talking about?
Sure. So, as I mentioned at the last meeting, the Borough submitted a series of land selections a couple of years ago, and DNR is now...
Excuse me, Liz, is there a microphone?
There is a microphone in front of me, yes.
Oh, it's not. I've got to turn my hearing aids up. It looked like there's some other people in the audience that maybe were having a hard time hearing that today. I said that. So, okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. Can you hear me now?
Well, yeah.
Okay, good. A couple of years ago, the Borough started their selection process. DNR is going through our initial selections, which are our higher priority selections. According to them, they're almost completed with that initial round, and they have asked us to provide basically the next set of selections that they would consider, and they would go through their adjudication process. And so that's what I am presenting to you for consideration, is the next set of land selections for the state to look at. And if you would like, I can kind of give you a north to south overview of what we're looking at. And maybe we can, thank you, Debbie. Otherwise you can't really see. Oh, I thought you were going to do the lights. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So just heading north to south. So this is the Cape Fanshawe area, and everything in red and down here in white are our selections. They're currently adjudicating these little lots down here in white, and so I'm suggesting that we kind of finish out this whole area and put this as a priority. Just for your information, this is all of the selectable land in the Fanshawe area that's available to us.
Mr. Mayor, can we go one by one on these areas? Could I get a question for you?
Yeah, if you have a question, just...
I have a quick question, Liz, while we're still on Cape Fanshawe. What was that white line again?
So this right down here, there's a series of lots here, remember where the old town site was? And so these are already being adjudicated currently. So this was in our priority selection list. So these are already in play, as it were. Okay. And so I'm just providing, suggesting that we just do the rest of the area up there as well for the second round.
So then the red will all be in our second selection, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then heading south here. This is Thomas Bay. The area in white and this area in black are under our current selections. They're adjudicating these right now. This area in black is where that rock and sand pit is, and is probably not going to be recommended to be conveyed to us, just so you know. This is another area we could consider for a priority. I'm not overly concerned about us getting this in the end. I think it's very likely that the rest of it we will get. So I didn't have it as a priority at this point. The next area is, this is obviously the Narrows, north part of Kupernoff Island. This big chunk right here, to put that in the second selection group. This would be the area if that proposed road to Cake ever was built, it would likely go through this section right here. And just FYI, all these areas that are colored in are areas that have been selected. The ones in red are the ones that we're kind of looking at for priority. This is the Falls Creek area. The white is currently under adjudication. I'm suggesting that we just finish out this whole area here and add that red part too, for them to consider in the second round. This is the gun range, not really particularly high priority. Duncan Canal, King Channel area. This is currently under adjudication. I was just going to grab this little waterfront section as a priority. This is Woodpecker Cove area. The ramp is right here. The white is already under adjudication, and just finishing out the waterfront down there on that part of the island. And then over here on South Mitkoff, all of this is currently under adjudication. Again, the black is, this is Olson's, and this is the South Mitkoff terminal. We probably will be denied those conveyances. This is actually partially Southeast State Forest and partially Ernie Hagen State Park that they had told us was selectable, but it actually isn't, so that will not be conveyed. But there are a few little pieces that we're able to grab that were waterfront along this shoreline. Not as much as we would like, but certainly worth taking a look at and trying to capture these here as well. And so just those areas that are in red, it's about 3,700 acres. Currently, they're doing about 1,800 acres, and we're into year 2 now of that process with them. So I would say at least 2 years, for these ones in red. The only other strategy we could consider is maybe focusing more on consolidated areas so that it's a little bit easier for them, if they're working just in one area, as opposed to being a little bit spread out where I have it now. But I would think that these are a little bit higher priority for us, especially those waterfront areas would be a higher priority.
Okay. Any questions of Director Cabrera? Okay. So, Member Stan Gregor.
No, I just wanted to comment. Thank you, Liz, for your efforts on this. This is, stuff that impacts all members of the borough in one way, shape, or form or another, and I'm well aware of the exhausting work you've put into this, so thank you for bringing us these recommendations.
Okay, all those in favor of authorizing Liz to use this as our priority, say aye. 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 Okay, thank you, Liz, for your work on this.
Sure thing.
And I'm sure you'll keep us informed on the quick response from DNR.
Absolutely, yes.
Next item on the agenda under unfinished business is D, the Fox Group incidental costs. And I would entertain a motion to authorize the manager to hire the Fox Group for consulting services for Mountain View Manor, not to exceed $20,400 plus an estimated incidental expense budget of $1,650 for an estimated total cost of $22,050.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Stanton Gregor. Any discussion? Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit the last meeting, so clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously. That brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is item E, Caterpillar 320 excavator. And just for a little clarification, this was voted on at the last meeting on a 4-3 vote by the Assembly on May 6th. And it can be put back on the agenda. And I asked to have it put back on the agenda for a few reasons. But to discuss this issue, a motion to rescind the previous Assembly approval to purchase must be made and seconded to get it on the floor. And if a motion and second are made, a vote of 4 or more to rescind will nullify the previous approval to purchase the excavator. A vote of less than 4 to rescind will bring us back to the original approval on May 6th and of the purchase, and the purchase will move forward. So I'd entertain a motion to rescind.
Well, second, or for the sake of discussion, I'd like to hear.
Okay, so you're making a motion? Or?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it again for the sake of the discussion.
Okay, so a motion's been made by Member Norham, and it's been seconded by Member Walherder to rescind the action taken on May 6th. And I will let other people speak first, unless they would rather have me explain myself.
That's what I was going to ask for, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask that you explain,
Okay.
why, since you brought it forward, why you'd like us to do this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, a couple reasons. During the last meeting, when Public Works Director Cotter was asked of the condition of the 240, I believe it is, CAT 240? I don't know. And the hours on the machine, and said 5,500 hours, wasn't sure if it was rebuilt or if that was on a rebuild of the motor, and I know the motor's not the only part of a piece of machinery. So that kind of made me think, well, maybe it could be rebuilt. And he was asked what it would cost. I believe that was by Member Walherder, and he said roughly $25,000. And I totally agree with the testimony earlier today about safety. I've worked around heavy equipment in an earlier career, and I agree that, you need good equipment. And then another reason I wanted to bring it back to discuss was we're proposing to buy a excavator that has been used by a construction company. Has 3,300 hours on it, comes with no warranty, and I don't know what kind of inspection's been made, but one of my questions that came into mind after this vote was, has there been an oil sample taken, analysis that you send in to a person that analyzes the sample, and they can tell you the wear and tear on the machine, on the engine. And I think it's pretty important if you're going to spend $180,000 on a piece of equipment if you know the condition of it. And another part of the discussion at the last meeting was that I believe we're buying this through NC in Juneau. They're helping us facilitate
machinery,
this. Yeah. And they were, I believe, quoted as saying it's in good shape. So I guess, we've worked with them in the past, so you can take their word on it. But I personally, if I was buying a close to a $200,000 piece of equipment, I would want some, I don't know the right word, some verification that the machinery's in good shape, the undercarriage tracks, etc. So that is why I brought it back to the floor, Member Stan Greger. Member Walherder?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was one of those people that voted against the purchase of this. And then I ran into the mechanic, and he told me that this thing was pretty much wore out. So I started to change my mind. But I have to agree with you that if NC Machinery is going to be warranting this, or they're the ones that are brokering the deal, would they be willing to give us some kind of a 6 months warranty on, at least once we get it in our hands to see how it works? I'd feel much more comfortable buying a piece of equipment if they would give us like 6 months. And so like say he pulls the lever like he was saying, and the bucket rolls out and then it drops down again, and they don't give us any kind of warranty, well, that's on us again. So, I'd be more than happy to replace that piece of equipment. There's no question about it. But I really need to know that somebody's be willing to stand behind the condition of this piece of equipment for at least 6 months, once it gets here in our hands.
Okay, any other discussion? Director Cotta, or maybe Mr. Hagan, Director Cotta's in charge of Public Works, so What assurances do you have, you feel, that this piece of equipment is going to be reliable when we get it?
Well, we built some language into the request for proposals. I won't read you all of it, but under equipment specifications, we said the Borough is seeking a Caterpillar 320 in excellent running condition. Under service history, we required that all unit systems shall be fully functional as originally delivered from the factory, and the unit shall have no existing structural, mechanical, hydraulic, electrical, or corrosion problems. So we've included a lot of language in our request for proposals. We did not include a requirement for a survey or a warranty, oil analysis, but we put language in there basically to say, when we get this machine, it needs to be in good running order with no existing problems. So we're going to be checking that thing out if we get it. Before it gets placed in service, it's going to get gone through stem to stern by our mechanics. We probably will pull an oil analysis on it ourselves, send it out. If it has any existing issues, we would then go back to NC Equipment and say, hey, you didn't meet the requirements of the request for proposal. The equipment doesn't meet our specifications, so we're not accepting it.
Member Stan Gregor.
Yeah, I've got a one for Chris and then my own thought here. Chris, is the company that's brokering this, have they had municipalities come back to them before and say that and kind of the situation right now, we're at a meeting, we approved a contract and then changed their mind 2 weeks later? That's something they've encountered in the past?
According to the person that made the proposal, no, this has never happened to them.
Thank you. And I want to thank the Public Works guys who came out tonight to testify about that. I completely agree. Safety is paramount. And I've definitely be voting for the purchase of the excavator for a variety of reasons. But for me, this one actually goes beyond, it could be an excavator or something else. I think it's a really dangerous precedent for us as an assembly to vote to overturn contracts. I know we haven't technically signed it, but we voted to approve a contract. Petersburg should be known as their word is strong and good. We say we're going to do something, we do it. It could be an excavator or any purchase item. I want businesses to know that we're good partners to do business with. And when we say something, we follow through on it. That the assembly isn't going to be fickle and change their mind. Because a contract is a contract. I really hope the assembly members who voted no on it last time vote no today, just to let us purchase this thing. We can disagree on an issue, but it's bad business to change our minds at this point. Our Public Works Director and his crew have vetted this plan, and it was approved by the Assembly. Let's let it be done. It's better business. It represents Petersburg much. It's a better representation of us as an Assembly. So I implore everyone to vote no on it, to rescind. Thanks.
So in reply to that, we voted to purchase it. The purchase order wasn't signed, so I don't think the contract was totally complete. I agree we need a piece of equipment to perform the tasks of this machine that we're talking about, but I'd hate to have something come from Ohio or Iowa or wherever it's coming from without some kind of guarantee or warranty or some kind of more analysis on the condition of the piece of equipment, because you don't just put it in a priority box and send it back.
Right.
So anyway, that's my opinion. Member Walter?
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, Mark. The other thing, too, is so, Chris, you said you put in your language, will that hold up in a court of law? I mean, it's going to be your opinion that it didn't come from the factory like you thought it should come from the factory. I mean, what's the standard that we're going by here? I mean, I know the guys up at NC Machine, the guy that manages the place up there. I could call him up and say, I'd be much more comfortable with this deal if you gave us at least, say, a 4-month warranty on this thing, which means that if we look at it and we don't like the hydraulic valves, you replace them. If we don't like the hoses, you replace them. If we don't like, the way the tracks and all that stuff, you replace them. If they would sign on to that, You know, I'm 100% behind this. I mean, nobody wants to throw money out the window. Like Mark said, we're not putting it in a, you know, in a return box and saying we don't want this piece of equipment, because once it lands here, it's ours, especially the way this contract's written up. So is there any way that, I mean, how quickly do we need this piece of equipment? Is there any way you could get NC Machine to give us some sort of a guarantee that they would do that for us for the first, say, even month? Just something, that we have some assurance that we can go over this and say we don't like the condition of this, you know.
I think we have that ability without a warranty. You might be able to get a piece of used equipment with a warranty. As I say, we didn't write that into our specs. It's not part of the deal at this point. I kind of floated that subject to them earlier today after listening to the mayor's comments on borough business, and they're not really interested in adding that into the equation at this point. Like I say, I feel comfortable that we've got enough language in the proposal documents that if we get something that's not in tip-top shape, we can tell them they failed to perform according to the contract. The factory warranty, just so everybody knows, is a 1-year warranty. So unless you when you buy a new piece of equipment, you only got a 1-year warranty anyway. That's standard. So I don't know. You're not buying that much more coverage, I guess, with a new piece of equipment.
Member Walker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. One more follow-up, Chris. Has there been a maintenance log on this piece of equipment?
Yes.
Do you have it in your possession?
I don't have it with me. I've reviewed it. It was pretty basic, but it was submitted along with the the other documents, the pictures and so forth. Looks like it's had regular oil changes and no major failures of any kind during its service life. It did have an oil analysis also, but that was earlier in its career. It doesn't have a recent one like now, you know.
Okay, Member Norheim?
I guess, do you feel that if this unit was rebuilt with a $25,000 cost of rebuilding it, would it be safe to use again?
You're talking about the current?
The current one we have, yes.
The 240. Possibly. We don't know why the hydraulics are bleeding off, so we really haven't delved into that issue. It's something that's come to my attention, more recently. When we made our budget proposal last year, we knew it had other major issues and we're looking at major repairs. The hydraulics bleeding off wasn't part of that equation. We probably could spend, I don't know, it might be less than $20,000, to fix the hydraulics. We've got other problems with that machine. It's got lots of problems with the tracks. The bucket, general purpose bucket's been rebuilt about as many times as it can be rebuilt. It's the pins in the boom are getting loose, and that's just because of the kind of duty it's had, working in the rock quarry, and that's not easy on a machine. We're losing engine power. That's another issue. If you start adding up, fixing all those things, you're way beyond value of this piece of equipment, and we haven't really run the fleet that way in the past. We're not in the habit of keeping old junk around and just patching it together indefinitely. When you get something that's got major issues, especially lots of major issues, typically, it's time to replace that piece of equipment. Sorry, that was kind of a long answer, but...
So then, I guess, the $25,000 does not, and what does that entail in the rebuild if all of this stuff that needs to be replaced is not a part of that $25,000? What was that?
I believe the $25,000 figure that was thrown out at the last meeting was for an engine,
Just the engine.
Engine rebuild or replacement, whatever, if we were going to do that, we'd figure out whichever option was less costly and go with that. But I don't think $25,000 is unreasonable to expect if you did a major engine, like I say, overhaul or replacement.
Any other discussion? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question here?
Okay, Member Mucci has the floor.
I can't hear anybody in the back. I can't hear anybody in the back room, but from the discussion, do we feel that we've done due diligence in selecting, looking at possible vendors and selecting the equipment or the piece of equipment we've got to? I guess that's the question, and I can't hear the answer, so I guess that's my dilemma.
Did you hear when Director Cotta explained that there was more different language in the RFP now that said we want the machine in good running condition, and I can't remember all the additions, and just to expand on that a little bit, if there's going to be changes to an RFP for a piece of equipment that we're voting on, I'd like to see that in writing on the agenda, so we could, digest that. But I guess this maybe wouldn't have received a motion to even rescind. So anyway, that would just be my bit of it. No, I don't know. Chris, can you answer his question? So somehow he can hear it. Can you hear us up here fine, Bob?
I can hear you. I can hear you just fine. I can't hear anybody in the back room very well.
Okay, well, maybe the microphones don't tie into the this one?
He could go there. It'd be closer at least to here.
Yeah, Chris, could you come forward and please, I'm sorry to drag this on. Member Lynn has a question. Director Cotta is going to come to the microphone. You should be able to hear him, Bob.
Thank you.
Did you catch his question, Chris?
Can you hear me, Bob?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay. I believe what he asked was, did we do our due diligence in locating an appropriate vendor? And what we did was kind of our typical process when we advertise for an equipment purchase of this magnitude. That's not it's not a contract purchase. In other words, we're not buying something that's part of another contract deal with a government agency or whatever. So we're going to, our proposal process involves advertising. So we did some advertising, and we put it on the, on the Borough web page. We advertise, I believe, in the Seattle Journal of Commerce. I also called, I don't know how many dealers, I did a direct solicitation, I found equipment online, I found where somebody had a piece of equipment that met our specifications, and I asked them if they'd like a copy of the RFP, so in addition to public advertising, we were out there looking, online and talking to different people, and NC Machinery was the only one out of all the folks that saw the ads or were contacted that decided to offer a proposal. And so, the piece of equipment that they offered met our specifications as we wrote them in the RFP, and so we made a recommendation to award. Does that answer your question, Bob?
It does, and I thank you.
Okay.
Okay, another member Mucci, you have a comment?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just for clarification, we're just voting to rescind.
If a yes vote would change a former vote, a prior vote, and a no vote would move back to the outcome of the meeting on the 6th. Am I correct?
Correct. And just some added stuff, well, these are, it's a great discussion. I mean, these questions should have been answered. I mean, you should have asked these questions during our first reading of this. And to have, if I would have walked into the city manager's office the next day and say, oh yeah, I was on the short end of a vote and I want to bring this back up because I think I didn't ask enough questions. I don't think that's the way the system works. I mean, for me, if we're going to do business and we vote on stuff and then we move on, it just bothers me that one of us are able to go in and kind of halt what the majority of the body wanted to do. So I'm voting no on this motion to rescind.
Okay, just for clarification, this isn't the first time this has happened with this seated assembly. It's happened on a couple of different issues, and if you think back, you'd probably recall them. I'm not going to get into an argument about it, but there's been other assembly members that had questions on a decision that was made, and they brought them back up, and we revisited them many times in some cases. So just wanted to throw that out there. I was concerned about the size of an expenditure without feeling comfortable on the condition of the machine, but that's just my opinion. So, Member Walhooter?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are you dealing with Justin up at the NC machine?
No.
Okay. All right, well, he's the manager up there, and he's one of the gill knitters that I service in the summertime there, so if we have any problems there, I'll string them up.
Our contact person is Eric Clark, just so you know.
Okay, so is there any other discussion?
Just clarification. As a safety issue, I think I'd like to keep the original motion as it is to purchase the equipment. So I'd like to know, is it yes or no?
You have to vote no if you want to go back with the decision we made on May 6th.
Okay.
The motion is to rescind the prior decision, change it. So, Member Morrell.
I just have a question, just because I'm curious. What would a new one cost, just out of curiosity?
If we got it with everything that's on the machine that we're trying to purchase here, it'd be around $260. I think in my memo I had quoted a smaller difference, and that would have been, if we were buying new, we might try to maybe not have, say a pin grabber coupler. It takes longer to change buckets, but that's a $10,000 ad. So if you equip something the way this machine is equipped, yeah, probably about $260.
Yeah, so substantially more. And is this one other question? Just this 320 obviously is a bigger machine than the 240, or did they just change the number of classifications and this is roughly the same size?
It's roughly equivalent.
Okay.
Approximately the same weight. I can't remember if the horsepower is a little more or less, but it's an equivalent machine to what we have now.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, or what the machine we have now could originally do, I guess, would be a better way to put it. Yeah.
Thank you for all your effort.
Okay.
Chris, so is there any other questions? And everybody is clear on what the vote is, yes or no? Okay, clerk, call the roll.
Randy?
No.
Mark?
Yes.
Bob?
No.
Jeff?
No.
Jay?
No.
Taylor?
No.
Kurt?
Nope. Okay, so the motion to rescind fails with myself, the only one opposed. So we'll be ordering, signing a purchase agreement tomorrow. Well, whenever the manager gets back, or maybe Debbie has the authority. So, next item on the agenda is Petersburg Borough / Petro Marine Incorporated Land Exchange. I would entertain a motion to authorize the manager to proceed with this change. So move for the exchange. Motion's been made by Member Walhooter, seconded by Member Mucci. Discussion. Member Stan Greger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One, two parts, but one is a point of clarification. Does that involve all four action items as part of that?
I think we could probably, if somebody's comfortable with that, would you think we should do them individually? Because they all have to be approved for the deal to move forward?
Yes, and the idea was, if this was approved with all four of the items in the suggested motion, we could move forward and do multiple things without having to come back after each little step.
Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's
And just for clarification for the public that might be listening to this, The motion includes authorize Manager Giesbrick to have a Phase 1 environmental assessment completed on the petrol warehouse property at the borough's expense. And with that being said, I'd like to know if that's figured into the evaluation here, or the figures. Second, authorize Manager Giesbrick to order a full title search on the petrol warehouse property, which I would assume would be the on the borough's dime. 3, authorize Manager Giesbrick to make a formal offer to Petro that includes paying Petro Marine $80,000, elimination of the Berthing Dolphin proposal, and transfer of ownership for the properties involved, and authorize Manager Giesbrick to have the borough attorney prepare all documents needed to cancel the existing lease, sell the leased property, and purchase the petrol warehouse and property. So those, all 4, if we want to proceed, will be involved in this motion.
Correct.
Everybody's clear? You got it, Bob?
I've got it. Is it open for an alternative motion?
The person could make a motion at any time. This is,
This would be.
you could amend it, I think, would be the correct way to go. To amend the current motion, which is to move forward and authorize the manager to go through these 4 steps.
I would like to make an alternative motion. That would be is to put this on the fall ballot for an advisory vote from the public of whether or not we should proceed.
That way.
I suppose we could do that, but I feel we've been talking about this issue for many, many months, and I would like to just see it come to a resolution myself. Member Stan Geiger.
Parliamentary clarification. To go about it that way, you'd have to vote no on this and bring that up as a separate issue, I believe. Is that correct, Clerk Thompson?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll stand down then.
Okay, any other discussion? Member Stan Geiger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be voting yes on this for several reasons. One is Harbor Master Lorianne Wallen, and feel free to add anything when I'm done. Glow has spoken at length about this topic and is in full support of it. Her harbor staff are in full support of that. The Harbor Board has unanimously voted to support this. These are all, and the Harbor Board in particular is a full board of democratically elected people with really the most expensive infrastructure in the borough. The harbors. It is. And they feel comfortable with this. All of these people have a vested interest in the harbors being financially viable and successful. And again, unanimously, these people are saying, hey, this is really good for our department. We're well aware of the financial impacts of it, and we feel comfortable with it. The chairman of the Harbor Board, Bob Martin, spoke to that directly this evening. They know what they're talking about. And for me, all other issues aside on this topic, this many people in that department feel that confident about it. I need a really compelling reason to override the board's recommendation, a unanimous one at that, and the department itself. So based, again, all their details aside, based on those facts, there's no reason I wouldn't vote for this. It's time. Everyone involved is fully in support of it, and I think it is time to put it to bed and vote yes. Again, specifically because the board and the department themselves are all unanimously in favor of it. They know their finances better than anybody else. Thanks.
Any other discussion?
I have a question.
Member Walter.
Go ahead, Brandy.
Pardon me?
Brandy was...
I recognize you folks. I'm running a meeting. You can speak.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just didn't want to cork her. But anyway, all right, I'm along with Jay there. I agree with everything he said. A couple of other things that have really kind of... I started to think about this swap. How did it happen? How did it come down? Why did Petrobrine all of a sudden decide to offer this what we would consider a sweetheart deal? I think the reason was, and we've had verbal confirmation, but we haven't got anything in writing, and that is that Petrobrine has a new CFO. we got notice or wind that they were paying $26,000 a year on a lease to the city of Petersburg when they already had a facility here in town that they could utilize without paying us $26,000. So I think that's how that conversation got started. Now, Bob, I've talked to him quite a bit about it. He said he didn't want to move from where they're at right now into the Union 76 station, is what I'll always call it, but the Petromarine building, the other building, is because it was too far away from his other facilities. So he talked it over, and they decided to offer us this swap so that they could remain all on the same property. So if we don't take this deal, I'm afraid what's going to happen is we're going to lose that $26,000 anyway, because they're going to go back to their original building, and then we're going to be stuck with this building, which isn't enough room, apparently, for Ben to do his business. There's no land associated with it. Ben and I went and measured that land at the Petromarine building. There's 22,000 square feet up there inside of the fenced area. If we so choose that we needed more parking, that would be available for more parking for the South Harbor. If we chose to possibly use that as potential lease property, we would have to just merely lease out 8,333 feet to get our $26,000 back at 26 cents a square foot, in which we're doing right now. So it makes no sense to me at all that we should pass up this deal because they're not making any new land. So I'm going to be voting for that for these reasons.
Any other discussion? Member Borough.
I just have a quick question. I'm sure I'm going to get a bunch of eye rolls from the Harbor Committee and the Harbor Board. I was wondering, we were just talking about different spots to that potential places to build. What are we doing with that north approach? What, I mean, that would be right next to the current shop. The one that was rebuilt, that's basically a parking spot.
Can you answer that, Chloe?
Sure. We looked into that, and we just rebuilt it because it was we had already partitioned off half of it because we couldn't even stand on it anymore. So we had to rebuild it or just condemn it. So we chose to rebuild it using surplus materials that we had, so that's why we got such a good deal on it. It is primarily, it's not big enough. We'd have to probably go 2-story, and its location in that very, very busy corner spot there where Trident is hauling out vans all summer. They're using most of the roadway for their parking spot. It's just too congested. As well as if you were going to have to build a new facility, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we would also have to have an adjacent or another place that we would have to use borough property to store stuff. So we wouldn't accomplish getting everything in one location. It would be super expensive, and we'd be fighting with Trident all the time, trying to access it. So those are primarily the reasons why we put that further down our list of options.
Any other discussion? Member Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this has been quite the ordeal getting this thing done. I've been to a couple of planning and zoning meetings and a couple of harbor board meetings where we've talked about the same subject, and these meetings have been going on for the last at least 3 years. And I remember somebody mentioning at a planning and zoning meeting, are we still talking about this? And we had overwhelming vote of support from planning and zoning twice, overwhelming vote of support from the harbor board. I'm sure we've all been down there in the maintenance shack where the harbor master is, and it's not good enough for the amount of work that these guys are doing. I'm sure we've all been in the trailers or looked at the trailers. You could kick in the front doors of all those trailers. I mean, they're all leaking. All the expensive equipment we have in there is getting rained on. It's not really secure. They're closed, but the only reason the boogeyman's not in there is because they probably can't pry the doors open because they're rusted shut. I like this idea because we have a maintenance person who is taking care of the museum, the library, motor pool, public works, fire hall, police, municipal building, and he'll be able to work out of this facility as well. I mean, in a time where we're trying to, do as much recycling and using things more than once, I mean, here we have a building that these guys can work in. They can put some money into it with a waste oil heater, and and like Lorianne was telling me, I mean, if we're going to start leasing out land in that facility, that fenced facility, we can charge more for that because it's more secure. When I was out camping a couple weeks ago, for light reading, I took this Department of Environmental Conservation report that they did on the Petro dock, and it talks about all the soil samples and the soil, the test pits. They've done 87 soil samples from 93 through 2006. They've done 14 groundwater samples. There's a couple times that they found some part of a diesel contaminant or gasoline contaminant that they took out to a piece of property next to my house and dumped it in the muskeg for remediation, and then they brought it back into town and put it up the dump. I think the environmental thing is a good thing to have it checked again, but if you look at this report, it's pretty, it was pretty thorough. There are a lot of people who had concerns about this, and this is something that the harbor needs. I tried to get a hold of the McDowell Group to get a value of the boats in the Petersburg Harbor, and I was never able to get a hold of them. But there are millions of dollars of vessels in this town, and they're working out of this creosote-infested shack that I just hate going in it because I feel like I'm getting contaminated from something. I mean, these guys work hard. They need a place to work, and I'm voting for this and hoping to move on to other items for the borough.
Any other discussion? Okay, as everybody can expect, I'm still opposed to this, and I have a couple of questions first. Why does the harbor need 4,000 square feet of outside storage? One. Second, how did we come up with the number 20,000 square feet if we build a new building? And third question, I guess, would be what kind of work are we going to do in a 20,000 or 2,000 square foot building? Sorry, not 20,000, 2,000, 40 by 50 is the number that's used in option one if we build a new building.
Want me to answer?
Well, I would just, yeah.
Yeah. So, part of it was, we go to the state and they're building a facility that's roughly the same size. That's where you got the $100,000 number for building a steel building, Davis-Bacon and all of that. And sure, we could narrow it down. What we're looking at is, if any of you have driven by my shop, that's kind of what I have, is a 40 by 40 foot building with a another 15-foot overhang, and that's a pretty good size building. You can get some stuff done. You can get things in there. We can get storage. We've got, we calculated the outside storage on what we're doing now. We're storing 100-foot pilings for projects that, when we have things happen in the harbor, we need to have materials. So we used what we have now as our baseline. And those are the numbers that we came up with. Sure, we could probably par it down because the Petro building is actually smaller than that. And so we could par it down by, a couple hundred feet. But those were just the ballparks that everybody was throwing around, and the state had a building that they had just bid out, and so that's where we got that $300,000, just to use as a comparable.
Okay, I guess what I'm trying to do is wrap my mind around the financial part of it.
Sure.
And if I remember the chain of events that brought us to today, and these figures we're looking at, it was back in the winter when Member Walter came to the assembly with some figures, what it was going to cost in comparisons. And then I'm not sure exactly where those numbers were.
We went out and got numbers from, like I said, the state. We went to Carl and asked about numbers for utilities. We tried to really do our homework on that.
I'm trying to figure out where those numbers came from, and then when Jody's presentation, or email she sent to us, there was 3 scenarios, and saying she would use some of the numbers provided by the harbor, and then, so she came back, and her answer was, well, it looks like the cheapest of the three options would be to build a new building on borough-owned land.
I don't
or
see that
something
on
along those
her.
lines. And then, am I incorrect, Jody, about
You know, I don't remember the new building being the cheapest option in this scenario. I wasn't, it was a working document until the very end, and I got it vetted from the harbor. I was trying to pull numbers from the harbor department's write-up that Glow did. So things were moving around. Maybe at one time it was.
Okay.
I honestly, I don't remember it.
Okay,
that being-
all right, well, I won't hold you to something that isn't in a written official email. But so then, the numbers that we're looking at here, we've got in the spreadsheet to make option one worth $676,000. We have additional open storage area, $127,920. If we needed the storage area, I think there's potentially borough land, and maybe just for an example would be the old power and light yard that they're, in this current budget, they're talking about moving that stuff to Scow Bay. Building location, land development, 62,000, I can see that, but in Jody's explanation here, if we used borough-owned land, example, land up by the public workshop, and built a building up there. I know there's been discussion, well, that's too far from the harbor. It took me 3 minutes today to drive from up there to the harbor in a couple different areas. And if you take those two numbers out of the equation, it makes the option one worth $260,000. And land swap, Petro land swap, the price is $465,000. So it makes it cheaper. I'm not in any way saying we don't need a maintenance shop for the harbor. I agree we do, but if there's a cheaper way to do it, I think we should go the cheaper route. I'm visiting with Senator Stedman this weekend in a conversation, and he told the manager, he said, hold on to your checkbook. He said, the budget is not done. So we don't know what kind of money we're going to have. So I don't know that these numbers couldn't be changed around a little bit and make, some of these options, one or two, more affordable. So, Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just I guess a question for the harbor master. So if we build a new shop up there, how would we pay for that new facility?
Well, I guess that's part of it. Back to Mr. Mayor's comments is, first of all, I did go to Carl and I did go to Chris and ask about those two pieces of property, and they said they weren't on the table. They were not available. They are using their property, and yes, the assembly can kick them out and put us in, sure, but they don't have a bunch of extra property up there for us to commandeer. So that being said, that's kind of where that scenario went. If we built new, it would come out of our savings. Currently, we have been talking with you over the last couple years about dedicating those savings for that big harbor dredge project. And so literally, we'd probably be talking about raising rates in order to be able to afford a new complex, a new building that's going to run between $400,000 and $500,000. By the time you build a new facility, you develop the land, because they don't have any land to give us, it's going to have to come out of the savings, which will take away from another project, which we're going to be required to come up with a match for. So it just kind of snowballs into, I don't know that we can afford new. We just can't afford it because we don't have those kind of dollars available to dedicate towards a facility. We're talking about $120,000 with this petro trade, $80,000 to trade, and another $40,000 over the next 5 years to develop the outlying property if we need to. So we can afford that, and we can afford to absorb the lease because I believe that we will make up a big portion of that in renting that secured area. I've already had 3 guys that have come to me asking about rental of that secure area behind the fence, and I think we can start turning a profit as soon as we take over, if we are allowed to take over ownership of that. So I just don't know where we'll get the money to build new.
So leasing land within the fence is part of the equation to make this land swap balance out?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in an asterisk. Jody put it down at the bottom because we don't have an actual amount, but like Kurt said, we can make up numbers. I mean, we charge 30 cents times 8,000 square feet, and we're there, so.
Member Walter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And underneath this, the Petro Marine Land warehouse swap, that $285,000 that Jody said was going to be an expense that we're going to lose, I'm convinced we're going to lose that anyway. Because Petro Marine, if they were satisfied with paying $26,000 or $28,000 a year, they wouldn't have made us an offer. I have a real strong feeling. Without, like Steve will tell you, in our conversations with Jason and mine with Bob, who had talked to Jason, they wanted out of this lease. They will move into this building. They will move into the Petro Marine building. So one way or the other, we are going to lose that $28,000 anyway. So I don't believe that's a number we can use as how much this project's going to cost us. I don't want to gamble myself and pretend like we're not going to lose the 20. If we, if we don't take this deal, then I have a feeling the day we turn this down, they're going to turn around and they're going to make arrangements to move into the Petro Marine building, and we've lost that $28,000 lease from them, and we've lost an opportunity to pick up this property. So that's why I'm still going to vote for it.
Could that warehouse be used for the maintenance shop for the harbor?
We did outline that as an option, and it doesn't come, there'll be expense to it. I think Jody outlined it as well on hers, and it was probably the closest one to the Petro. Petro still is cheaper.
Member Lynn?
Yes, thank you. I've got to state that, I am definitely in favor of getting a better maintenance facility for the harbor. And I've looked at all the numbers and all the rhetoric we've thrown around. In my experience, I firmly believe we need to build our own structure on our own land somewhere. Well, if we look at Scow Bay, for instance, if we change that around out there, we have opportunity there. We have opportunity, as you suggested, and others. I'm firmly convinced that the cost of bringing that building up to a standard of which I'd want our employees in is going to be significantly higher than what was in there. And so I want a new facility, but I cannot go along with it. The other part of that is, if Petro really wanted out of this, then they should have really be able to make us a better deal than what's on the table. So I can't vote for it. I'm sorry.
Okay, any other discussion? Member Norham.
Kind of. As to the point of Petro wanting to make a better deal, they're a pretty large company and probably not in the business of losing, sorry to say it, to a small town. So if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't be giving us a great deal either. I mean, it's a good deal as it is, but I wouldn't try to sweeten it in any way. I mean, that's just me trying to win in every scenario. It's a win-win for them, but we get something good out of it too this way.
And I'd like to clarify on one of my statements earlier about the potential use of land at Public Works, and I wish the manager was here, because in more than one conversation with Manager Giesbrick, he implied that there was land available at Public Works from a discussion he had with someone that worked there. So if I'm wrong, if I'm misstating myself or making a misstatement, I apologize, but that is the information I've been working with. I'm not going to be in favor of this. Member Stan Greger.
You don't have to answer because I'm teetering on the rules, but would it change the way you voted on this if, given that information from the city manager?
No, because I think it's the best off for the borough fiscally and to have a new building versus a 45-year-old building. And taking that property off the tax roll.
No, clarifying, meaning if there wasn't land available at Public Works, would that change the way you saw this?
Well, I think we have other land available.
Got it.
No, but we have land that it's going to become vacant if Power Light moves to Scow Bay with their pole yard. So
got it. Thank
I
you,
just
Mayor.
don't think it's fiscally responsible with the state of the state. And I'd like to ask the finance director one question. Does this make fiscal sense to you over the long term? Jody, the numbers?
Oh, that's kind of unfair. There's a lot of different perspectives on this. There's a lot of different things that the harbor could do. The harbor knows what they want, and so I can't speak for them as far as that goes, but as the finance director for the borough, I am worried about what the state budget is going to be and the fish tax, and part of me would like to see us wait until then. But if that doesn't matter to the assembly, whether to vote for this or not, whether the harbor gets fish tax or not, then they should go ahead and vote for it. But like I said, the general fund might need money later on. And sorry, you flustered me. You put me on the spot. I wasn't expecting to have to answer this question.
I mentioned this morning that I was going to potentially ask you.
I thought you were joking. There's so many different options, and they do have the money for it. If they lose the fish tax, rates are going to have to go up for them. So that's my main concern.
Okay, thank you. There is a concern there. Member Mucci?
So if we do lose the fish tax,
yes,
the rates are going to go up anyway, not depending on what goes on with this land trade. Because the harbor has planned for this for years and put money away and raised the rates to cover the cost of this transaction. And so if we don't get the fish tax, and that's just a total different argument, then we'll deal with that in a different way. But this is something that has been planned for many years in the comprehensive plan through planning and zoning, the harbor department. This is something that has been planned and money put away for to make this thing happen. The fish tax thing that's a whole different argument.
Different issue, but affects the rates in the harbor, and just makes me think back on raising rates. I've had many fishermen come to me, and I wouldn't say 100, but quite a few concerned about rates going up and looking at cheaper places to moor their boats. So anyway, any other discussion? We could talk about this probably for another half an hour, but clerk, call the roll.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
No.
Randy?
No.
Kurt?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
No.
Jay?
Yes.
Okay, the land swap Petrol Marine passes on a 4-3 vote. Let me get back to the agenda here.
I sound like a complete idiot.
Kind of slow here. Does anybody want to take a 5-minute break before we start our new business? Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 8:25 there. Call the meeting back to order.
I know.
Everybody's present that was here before. We're under new business. And the first item under new business is a resolution, 2019-09. It's a resolution approving the single supplier purchase of pump station electrical controls. I'd entertain a motion to approve. So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Walleder. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Member Mucci.
Yeah, is it possible to get kind of an explanation of what this is for the folks at home who might not have this in front of them?
Mr. Hagerman?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So this control package is basically the electrical controls that operate the pumps, tell the pumps when to turn on and off. Also communication equipment. We have a SCADA system in the department that allows us to see when pumps are operating and diagnose problems. So that's included. Electrical disconnects. There's a transfer switch that allows us to connect the mobile generator to this unit if we had a power outage for any length of time, so we can maintain operation of the pump station. And all of that is housed in larger cabinets that will be installed by the general contractor when the construction contract is let.
Thank you. Okay. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Mark?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Thank you.
And maybe back up a little bit, just for the listing public, that was not to exceed $79,840 for this purchase. Next item under new business is B, Blind Slough Hydroelectric Project Professional Services. I'd entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Or portions of it.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Stanton Gregor. In this project professional services proposal, Director Hagerman has given us a couple different options, and we don't have to move forward with all of them. Carl, could you explain and kind of pick your best option if I didn't find it in your memo? I kind of personally think moving forward with the first two would be prudent, but I don't know, what's your thought?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I laid it out like I did because there's a little bit of catch-22 going on with this project. We absolutely need to do a rate study, and as long as the budget goes forward like it is proposed, we've got money in the department's budget to do that rate study next fiscal year. So that rate study will look at this project in combination with other projects to let us know how we stand in the long term as far as if our rates will cover debt service to get these projects done. And that's a very important piece of the puzzle. My first approach to this professional services contract was to look at actually the secondary option that I presented here is to add $300,000 to the existing, or that proposed $250,000, so that we could fund the first three tasks on the consultants list, task 1, 2, and 3. But the more I thought about it, and the fact that we didn't have a rate study done yet, there's some risk there. If for some reason we run into issues that drive the cost of the project up before we have a rate study done, then we're potentially spending a lot of money and maybe not following through with the entire scope of the project as presented by McMillan and Jacobs, our consultant. So the conservative approach, of course, is just to stick with the proposed budget, the $250,000 that I'm proposing in the budget, and to take care of part of task 1 in their proposal, because those are tasks, those three things that I've identified in my memo: the penstock internal inspection, the as-built-in survey of the penstock, and the hydrology report that develops an accurate guide curve for the project for operating the lake. Those are things that we should have done as a utility anyway, regardless if we move forward with a major refurbishment project. So we're really not out any money if we move forward with those three things. By the time we get done with those, and probably before, I'm hoping before, the rate study will be completed, and we'll know a little bit better. I'll have better information for the Assembly on the impact of this project to our rates in the department and where we're going to go. So as far as a best option, there's a risk in not moving forward as soon as we can. This is a long lead time project. It's going to, even if we start it today, it's going to take not be complete until 2022, the fall of 2022. If we wait, if we do the $250,000 option, just take care of some tasks without really ending up with ordering equipment, turbines by next summer. If we do the first option, we're gonna slip a year. We're not gonna, this project, if we move forward, isn't gonna be completed till 2023. So this is a long lead time project. The danger with that is, of course, if we have a major failure in the facility, it is quite old, and the condition assessment was pretty accurate in the fact that it needs to be refurbished. So if we lose the capacity to make power out there, we're going to be purchasing more power from SEPA, and like that will impact rates. So it's a very complicated issue, but I think moving ahead with tasks that we can get done that really aren't that risky to get done, even though it slips the project a year, is probably the best way to go, the most conservative way to go.
Okay, so, Member Waller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Carl, off the top of your head, can you let the listening public know, if you have this number, how much money does Crystal Lake save us each year in purchasing power from SEPA?
I worked that out. It's about $600,000.
Okay. So $600,000 a year is what that saves us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So any other discussion? Member Norheim?
I guess with the current drought that we're in, would you even be able to buy enough power to keep the town going if that facility failed?
That's a really good question, and timely considering the situation we've been in the last year. Right now, as of today, the Tyee Lake is rising rapidly. The snowmelt is really having a strong impact. Even without any rainfall, the snowmelt is we're gaining about a foot a day in Tyee. SEPA is looking very closely at the operations plan. They've proposed a revised operations plan that the board has yet to vote on that basically limits the power that's sold to Ketchikan in this next year. And depending on what happens with the lake level, there may not be any power sold to Ketchikan in this year. If that happens, the history of Tyee Lake shows that it is more than adequate to serve Wrangell and Petersburg alone. It's when you throw Ketchikan into the equation and selling power south is when it gets a little tight as far as available water.
Thank you.
So just to clarify here, what's the dollar value on the expenditure you're asking us to approve this evening? I mean, there's a couple different options. So in our motion, we didn't break it out. I hope someone help me with the direction we want to go here. If we approve all of the expenditures, are we going to keep putting? Is it going to be 1.4 million?
No, that's not what I'm proposing tonight at all. So there's two options. The first one would be to stick with the currently proposed budget. So there's been a $250,000 allocation from Power and Light reserves into the capital project fund that if the budget goes through, it will be there for us to use for that the surveying and inspection and hydrology. So that's the first option. So you wouldn't have to do anything tonight if that was the option that the Assembly chose. The second option would be to add $300,000 to that $250,000 so that the project fund had $550,000 available to do the first three tasks on the McMillan-Jacobs list in their proposal. So that includes all the preliminary engineering, development of plans for the project up to 60%, development of a purchasing a procurement specification for the electrical equipment, and the bidding process to purchase that electrical equipment and the turbine. Those items are very long lead, so their suggestion, their recommendation was to do a separate procurement for the equipment ahead of the construction contract. So by the time that the equipment was arriving in Petersburg, the construction contract was going to be awarded, had been awarded already. Mm-hmm. The contractor was ready to go, and we can keep the outage to as a short a time period as possible and just make the project more efficient.
Okay, now it's more clear to me. So what you're asking is option 1 or 2, and if we don't go with the already budgeted 250, we add 300-ish, it's 547, 635.
Right.
That for the first 3 phases of which we need to do if we move forward with the project that McMillan recommends.
Correct. And to reiterate, the first option would slip the whole project by a year. We wouldn't be complete until 2023. The second option would keep us on track. Next summer, we would have that bid package for the turbine and electrical equipment ready to go and on the street, and hopefully awarded by, I think it's the end of June in their schedule. So it keeps us on track to move forward with the project.
Okay, I understand. Member Stan Gregor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd be in favor of option 2. Not to be really simplistic, but we pay now or we pay later, and if this is a project we've already established needs to occur, I'd feel more comfortable keeping it on track, given the lengthy lead time of it.
Any other discussion? Member Walter?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just a clarification, Carl, for the listening audience out here. So this $547,635 is going to come out of the electrical fund. Yes. And you have how many millions in the electrical fund to draw from? So this is not coming out of the general fund?
It's not coming out of the general fund at all. The working capital in the electric fund is $7.6 million.
Right, yeah, so for the listening audience, this money is going to come out of the capital funds for the electrical company. So they're just asking us to be able to spend that money, so thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thanks for the clarity. Member Land?
Yes, thank you. I'm the same place as Assemblymember Gregor is. I think we need to jumpstart this and go to number 2. And my rationale is a couple reasons. Is that we know that we're losing windings on that on our turbine out there. But the unknown, the risk here is that how fast, and when will that occur? Nobody knows. And if we can do anything at all to jumpstart this, to put us in a position later on so that we can take it offline and bring it back online faster. I think we need to do that because there's quite a number of unknowns here. The other thing is that we have inspections we need to know to really know which direction to go is in part of this package. And I think the faster we go with it, the better off we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a point of clarification, do we need to amend this to remove the first section and just go with section 2?
I think we just need to agree to vote on option 2, which includes adding $300,000 to the current budget. Does that make?
And actually, Member Mucci, you're the one who made the motion, so if you'd like just to clarify your motion, I think that would be easiest.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to do. Just clarify.
So which option are you clarifying?
I'd like to see us do option 2.
Okay.
And that would be a total expenditure of $547,635.
Yes, sir.
I think we're all on the same page. Any other discussion? Member Norheim.
Just something quick for the public to know, for people who think maybe government is being wasteful here. Juneau's privately owned electrical company has a facility roughly the same age as this one, and they just redid theirs up in Snattisham, I believe, last year. So as a comparison, the private enterprise is doing the same thing that they're asking to do here, so not wasteful at all if that was a subject for anybody.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll, and we are voting on option 2, which is $547,635 to come out of the Electrical Enterprise Fund.
Kurt?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Okay, it passes unanimously, so we'll move forward with that very important project. Next item is approval for a minor subdivision application. This is an application from Sally Dwyer. Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Mucci. And just for the listening public, this is what's going on here. Local resident Sally Dwyer wishes to purchase half of a borough-owned lot on Sandy Beach Road next door to her current property to build a smaller home to live in. In order for her to file an application to purchase half of the lot must be subdivided. Ms. Dwyer has completed an application for a minor subdivision of the lot and is prepared to go through the subdivision process with the Planning Commission. Borough Code requires the owner of the property subject to subdivision to give permission for the subdivision requestor to begin the process. And I believe the borough owns the property, correct?
Correct.
Mrs. Dwyer is requesting the Assembly's permission to file the land use application. If the Assembly approves Mrs. Dwyer to file the application and the Planning Commission approves the minor subdivision, Mrs. Dwyer will then file an application to purchase. Member Stan Greger.
Yeah, I'll definitely be voting for this so you can begin your process, and just thank you for your patience sitting here the last 2 hours and 40 minutes to wait for your turn.
Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't know if Sally had anything to add to this, or... Nope, great.
So I have a question. If we go through the process and we give her permission to do the application for a subdivision and the land is deemed up for sale, does it have to go to auction?
It does not. It is up to the Assembly how it moves forward.
Similar to the land we just conveyed to some people between Sandy Beach and, or not Sandy Beach, Wrangell Avenue and the road right behind it, correct? There was a road easement that was similar?
A little different, but yes.
Similar.
I mean,
Yeah.
similar, yes.
Yeah.
What would happen is if it gets to the point where she files an application to purchase, it then comes before the Assembly, and at that time, the Assembly decides how it's going to move forward, whether it goes to auction or not.
Okay. Just wanted to know all of the potential steps. Member Lynn, do you have a comment? You've got the floor.
Just a question on this. If that lot, and I don't know what the lot is or so forth, but if that lot is subdivided, the portion that's left that still belongs to the borough, is that still, could that still be sold, and could there be a house, a build on it? In other words, are we doing something to take away or negate anything in the future that we could sell the other part of that lot? I guess is my question.
I can kind of answer that.
The clerk has an answer.
Okay, so since we did this agenda, things have changed a little bit, because if Sally asks for the subdivision to be halfway down the lot, the other half of the lot has a 60-foot easement that was on the deed from the federal government to the state, from the state to us, and that easement gives access to some mental health trust land behind the lot. That easement's not going to go away. So it would actually make the second lot something we couldn't deal with very easily, and it turns out from the formula with our assessors assessing the lots by size, it would cost Mrs. Dwyer more money even to buy half the lot rather than to change her application for subdivision to be the rest of the lot except for that 60-foot easement. So she is planning to redo her application and ask for the lot without the 60-foot easement. That would be the subdivision. The borough would still own the 60-foot easement. No, we wouldn't be able to do anything with it, but it would be like a right-of-way or something along those lines to access that property in the back.
Does that answer your question, Member Lynn?
That does, thank you.
Okay, Member Walter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Who owns the piece of property that would have that little 40-foot strip? I mean, the way I looked at it was 192 feet wide or something like that. So she's going to ask to have that thing cut in half. So let's just assume she gets 100 feet. Then we have 60 feet, so there'll be a 40-foot piece. Who's next to that piece of property? Would they be interested in rolling that 40-foot piece? Somerville's.
Except that the 60-foot easement is right on the property line butting up to the Somervilles.
Oh, so then where does that 40-foot piece go then?
It's good. Instead, she's going to change her subdivision application and add it into.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so it won't be wasted.
Thank you for the
So the only thing that will be left is the easement.
Correct.
Okay. Perfect. Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? And the vote on this is just to let her go forward with the application.
Correct,
Okay.
the subdivision process.
Right, okay. Clerk call the roll.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Kurt?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, we'll see when the process comes back to us. Okay, next item on the agenda is to reschedule the June 3rd, 2019 regular assembly meeting to June 10th. And the reason is to allow for both members of the manager evaluation team to be present for the executive session to discuss Manager Giesbrick's evaluation. And like I said earlier, myself and Member Mucci are requesting the first assembly meeting in June to be moved from the 3rd to the 10th. And it also gives us a little more time for those assembly members that would like to meet with the manager on a one-to-one basis to discuss their personal evaluations of the manager. And then we'll see if there's any changes and see if we need to adjust anything in the evaluation. So, any discussion?
You want a motion?
I'll make a motion, that we change the meeting from the 3rd to the 10th.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made. Second by Member Mucci.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Were we also going to be talking on this agenda to put a executive session at the end of this as well?
On the 6:10 meeting, yes, correct. Mm-hmm.
So,
sounds good.
All those in favor say aye.
Mr. Mayor,
Member Mucci.
Yeah, sure. I just had just a point of clarification here. So we're going to have a regular June 3rd meeting. It was going to be rescheduled to 6 o'clock on June 10th. And so then we're going to go... Okay.
Nobody's mentioned the time yet.
Okay, because it says here to June 10th at 6.
Yes, that's what was discussed in the office between you two the other day, because you thought you would be diving that day.
Well...
But let's talk about time.
Sure. I will be here on the 10th.
Okay, that's right. I didn't read that.
I am going to be diving in today, because we are diving for science. So it could be like, I'll wait to see how the rest of the group weighs in. How about that?
6 is good.
Okay, we take away that last vote. All those in favor. There was a time specified on this action, and it is on the 10th at 6 p.m. Member Stangrager.
And I may or may not be there. I plan my work schedule around the first meeting. I know it's a different date, but I work at noon during those times on Mondays. At 6 p.m. on the first half of the month. So it's obviously the will of the assembly, but I may or may not be able to attend that day. At an evening meeting, that is.
Member meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, is there a better time than 6? I'm doing something from 10 to 1, and I could come in earlier if you wanted.
I'll just follow the will of the assembly, and my chips will fall. They fall.
One's pretty close to noon, so the most important part is the executive session, probably at the...
Yeah.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we'll just do our regular assembly business there, and we'll go into executive session to talk about the manager's evaluation.
Correct.
With the goal that when we come out of executive session that we might have a list of goals and objectives that we have come to a consensus on that we would like the city manager to accomplish in the next year.
Correct. And something that you will vote on in public.
Mm-hmm.
You will approve the final eval in public.
No. And that will include the goals and objectives list. So, are we on for noon, or should we change the first meeting to 1 o'clock instead of 6? Since I think it'd be important if all the assembly members could be there, and if Member Mucci can...
I got a greater chance at 1.
Be available at 1, that would be...
Okay. 1 o'clock works for me. Thank you.
Okay, so you got that, Deb?
Got it.
All those in favor of having the first meeting in June on the 10th at 1 o'clock? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay. Then we have communications, and there's a letter that we got, and it's a response to the Borough from U.S. Forest Service Chief Chris Jansen regarding Tonka and Bigthorn timber sales, and we all have the letter. I guess I'll read it, so it's a public listing. Here's it. Or Debbie, do you have it? Can you read it? You're a better reader than I am.
Sure, I can read it.
Tired of talking.
I get it. Dear Mayor Jensen, Thank you for your letters of November 6, 2018 and April 16, 2019 regarding the June 2016 U.S. Department of Agriculture's Forest Service review of 2 Tongass National Forest timber sales. I apologize for the delayed response. I share your interest in a consistent, sustainable timber sale program on the Tongass National Forest that supports the local economy while adhering to strong policy, management, and financial controls. On April 20th, 2018, Christopher B. French, Acting Deputy Chief, National Forest System, requested a formal audit of the Alaska Regional Timber Program by the Forest Service Chief Financial Officer, including its cruise and appraisal programs. A team of auditors from the Forest Service Audit and Assurance Branch has visited Alaska, conducted a thorough review of timber sale documents, and interviewed agency personnel. The team of auditors are preparing a comprehensive program review of the timber program. When the report is compiled, we will review the results and make changes if warranted. We look forward to sharing with you those actions aimed to address any findings identified by the audit. Again, thank you for writing and for your interest in management of the national forests. If you have further questions, please contact Christopher B. French, Acting Deputy Chief, National Forest System at 202-205-1689. Sincerely, Victoria Christensen.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other communications that any other assembly members have? Member Ritchie?
It's not a communication. Are we at, I'll wait till recognitions.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
That's the next thing. So, assembly discussion item, only one item listed there, and that's recognitions. Anybody have any recognitions? Member Michi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple things. I wanted to thank the Planning and Zoning Committee for all their countless hours on working on rezoning issues. I've been to a couple of meetings, and they have their hands full. And for me, watching these meetings, I just appreciate all the time and effort that they're putting in, because eventually it's coming up here. And for me, I'm really appreciative of all their work. The other thing I have is that this week, starting on May 19th to the 25th, is National EMS Week. So I think it's a good idea to thank your EMS providers and everybody you see in an ambulance or at the fire hall. It's a good time to say thank you. I also had a couple things. Could I get a report from the city manager on what the status is of the Wilson Creek campground? I mean, is that looking like it's going to get turned over to us in the future? But that doesn't have to happen today.
Okay.
And then the last thing I have is we've all participated via call-in.
This is actually recognitions. But,
oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Want me to wait? Want me to wait? Should I wait?
Well, just to follow the right protocol. And,
sure.
Is there any other recognitions? Mr. Cotta.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to take a moment to recognize our 2 longest-serving Streets Department employees, Don Duke and Ron Ware. We'll be losing these guys as of May 31. And to give you a little perspective, Ron started with our department in 1985. Part-time, went full-time in 1988, and so has been working for the Streets Department since then. Don joined us in 2001. So collectively, these guys have over 50 years of experience in public works, and we'll be missing them greatly when they move on, but we wish them well. And we'll be having a little going-away party for them. It's a joint party per their request. On the 31st at 2 p.m. at Public Works, so everyone's welcome to stop by and congratulate them and give them a proper send-off as we show our appreciation for their many years of service to the department.
All right. Thank you, Ron and Don. If there's no other recognitions, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.